Okay, welcome back. Let's finish our topics here in our first lesson as they relate to VMFS and vSphere storage. Up next is the snapshot format for VMFS. VMFS 6 has a new default snapshot format that was only used in VMFS 5 when virtual disks were over 2 terabytes. VMFS 6 actually had the potential of using two different types of snapshot formats. Whenever you create a snapshot, there's always this delta file, right, that keeps track of all the changing data that has been traditionally the kind of thin disk type of file that grows and grows, starts off tiny and then grows over time, right? That particular delta format is known as a VMFS sparse file, right? It starts small and then grows as data is being recorded in your virtual machine, right? But if your virtual disk in the VM is 2 terabytes or larger, when you create a snapshot in that situation, the snapshot format actually is different. It's going to be what's called space efficient sparse, or otherwise known as SE sparse. This is a file format that actually supports not just a growing file, but also supports reclamation. What does that mean? Well, we'll cover that in more detail later on, but it basically is in that if the data that's being recorded and changing is actually removing content, we can actually reclaim the space so the thin disk like delta file can grow and shrink. Well, now in VMFS version 6, that is the new default format for any kind of delta file. All right, so they're actually not called delta files. If you were to actually do a long listing of your VM files from, say, a command line, you'll note that whenever you look at a delta file, it always had the word delta in its name. That's if it's in a VMFS sparse format. But with a space efficient sparse file, it'll actually say in the file name SE sparse as opposed to showing it's a delta file. So anyway, that is now for VMFS 6, the default format, right? That's the big change with VMFS 6. So it's just good that you have not just a thin disk, but a disk that can actually grow and shrink over time, because we don't want to have delta files that are just constantly growing and growing. And in fact, that's probably what they're going to do anyway, because what are they doing? They're recording changed data. And back to what we did mention earlier, that whenever you have a VMFS 5 and you would like to upgrade to VMFS 6, well, that's actually one thing that we can't do in place. You cannot upgrade a VMFS 5 file system to VMFS version 6. This is largely due to the underlying format differences. VMFS 5 is expecting to find 500 kilobyte sectors, all the header and mapping information within the VMFS header region is all expecting 500 kilobyte sectors. They're based on 1 megabyte size boundaries. Well, here with VMFS 6, it's all based on a 4K byte size format. So because of the underlying differences, there isn't the ability to redo the file system in place. So what you'll need to do, in fact, is just create a brand new VMFS 6 data store, migrate your VMs from your old VMFS 5 data store, and then, now that you've got all your VMs off the old VMFS 5, you can now take that VMFS data store and reformat that, basically from scratch to VMFS 6 and start using it for VMFS 6 purposes. So just keep that in mind. There's no in-place upgrade. You will need to do a migration to get to VMFS 6. So before we end our lesson, just to do one quick activity here, just to make sure everybody's paying attention, right? Amongst the things we just talked about, which of the scalability and performance features are available only with a VMFS 6 data store? So we talked a bunch of these, right? There's supporting for 4K native drives. There's faster creation times for files. There's SE sparse format as a snapshot format. There's maximum data store size of 64 terabytes. There's the ability to hot extend a virtual disk to any size up to 62 terabytes, and parallel disk operations and concurrent transactions. Which of these are exclusive to VMFS 6? Well, we did talk about 4K native drives. That is actually a VMFS exclusive. Faster file creation times. Well, that is also a VMFS 6 exclusive. Space efficient sparse as a snapshot format. Well, we just mentioned that. It's the default in VMFS 6. It is something that VMFS 5 can use. It is used, so it's not something that is exclusive to VMFS 6. It's used when virtual disks are 2 terabytes or greater. Maximum data store size, 64 terabytes. That's also shared by both VMFS 5 and 6. Hot extending of a virtual disk up to any size to 62 terabytes. That's also available for both file systems. And parallel disk operations and concurrent transactions. That is a unique feature to to VMFS 6. So if you got the first, second, and last question selected, you got these correct. So that ends our first lesson. We did explain why VMFS 5 is a high-performance scalable file system. We identified the performance improvements of VMFS 6 over VMFS 5, and we described the migration procedure from VMFS 5 to VMFS 6. And that concludes our first lesson. Stay tuned. We'll come back and take a look at the next lesson.